For those of you that are on, thank you for joining us. Really looking forward to this conversation as we talk about bridging the gap in supplier diversity. My name is Marcus Fontaine, and I'm the founder and owner of Impresiv Health. We are a certified minority-owned business, and look forward to introducing you to the two panels that I have with me today. Let's go to the next slide, Courtney. So why are we here? So what we're here to do is to ignite meaningful conversations between supplier diversity leaders and MeWeebies. In our opinion, as far as we know, a forum does not exist to give a platform for suppliers to engage with thought leaders and buyers in our space. So what we want to do is just knock down those silos and open up the floor to give everyone a voice. Just to give you guys a heads up, when you are, as we're going through our deck, we're going to see these icons in the bottom right-hand corner that say poll. And if you could, look at the poll questions and respond to them. This way we can collect as much data as we possibly can and know a little bit more about our audience. Next slide, Courtney. So our agenda for today, at a very high level, what we're going to do is talk about a couple challenges for both the buyer and supplier side. We want to give our panelists the opportunity to give us the voice of the unheard, as we call it. So what is everyone thinking, but not necessarily talking about out loud? And then where do we go from here? And again, our goal together collectively is to build a community for successful partnerships. So starting today, what we're asking is if you're joining us today or if you're viewing us online, that for our next session that we have, to invite a friend, invite a colleague. And together, we're going to grow this community of thought leaders in our space and diverse suppliers. And before you know it, we're going to become a referral network to drive change between us. So let's go to the next slide, Courtney. And I'd love to introduce the panelists that are joining us today. I have Constance Jones from HJ Staffing. She's the founder and CEO. And I have Mr. Mark Winston from Mark Winston Enterprises. So what I'd like to do is give them the opportunity to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit more about their businesses. So Constance, could you let us know a little bit about HJ Staffing?
Apologies, just having all kind of technical challenges. Full service staffing agency here, HJ Staffing. We're general staffing. We service it all. And we started from my kitchen table. So we have multiple experiences that we would love to sit and talk and go through with Marcus and the team here. And I'm just glad to be here and having this open conversation today.
Thank you, Constance.
All right.
Mark.
Yes. Listen, thank you so much, Marcus, for putting this on, because I think this is a very much needed conversation. But like I said, I'm Mark Winston. I'm founder of Mark Winston Enterprises, but a lot of people might know me in this space from the 10 plus years I spent working at Walmart across supply chain and supplier diversity and inclusion. So I spent a lot of time in that supplier diversity and inclusion, working with external organizations, NGOs, working with our buyers, working with our procurement managers, and cross-functionally, even spent a little bit over a year and a half or two in Walmart International in the supplier inclusion role. So being able to see so much of it, I decided, at one point, I wanted to step out and see the other side of it. So I jumped into my entrepreneurial hat, and I currently am doing some engagement work and consulting work for NMSDC. But Mark Winston Enterprises covers a span of things from the business development, business scalability, and consulting, supplier inclusion itself consulting for those who want to sustain or build supplier inclusion programs. But then also, I have supply chain. A lot of people who want to know about Mark, I just need to know how to get into the space, work with big companies, be scalable, and that's where I come in. Also speaking engagements, and then soon to be NIL management.
Very nice, thank you. And just to give you guys a little bit about Impresiv Health, we are a full-service healthcare consulting and staffing organization. We just hit our 10-year anniversary 2 weeks ago. In addition to being a fully certified minority business enterprise, we've made the Inc. 5000 list for the last 5 years. And similar to Constance, it all started with my daughter on my desk 10 years ago. And now I think we have close to 70, maybe 80 employees in the organization. We're growing, we're scaling, and just through networking, I've been fortunate enough to meet Constance and Mark. And we're coming together as friends in this fireside chat and hoping to a community of friends to move this conversation forward. So just looking forward to putting you guys on the spot and engaging in some good conversation here over the next 30, 40 minutes. So one of the first things that I want to talk about today are buyer and supplier challenges. I think it's common on both ends for, I want to say, buyers and suppliers to both feel defeated at times. As I started doing my research on challenges, I came across a Gartner study where they listed the top 3 challenges here that I've listed here for us to look at. So one of 3 things are happening. Business units have resistance to switching away from their incumbent vendors and suppliers. Challenges are finding suppliers that meet capacity requirements. And I think we all kind of go through what Constance and I just mentioned. We were a team of one once upon a time. So when you want to do big business, but you're wearing many hats, at the end of the day, you are a risk to a buyer, like Mark. So they're looking for folks that have the capacity to carry forward what they need because they're taking the risk on you. And then lastly, limited resources to devote to suppliers and diversity. So organizations may want to launch a diversity program, a supplier diversity program, but they may not have internal capacity or resources to do so. So as we think about this and challenges on both sides, I want to ask you guys from the seats that you sit in, and Constance, I'm going to ask you first, as a supplier in this space, what are some of the biggest hurdles that you've had to overcome and in your experience?
I will have to always say financials. Having the financing would be always my number one, but getting in front of the actual buyer and decision maker in this market, depending what we're going after, and having that fair advantage.
So what have you done to get to the buyer?
Ooh, I love RFPs. But even responding to RFPs, as many of us know, it's networking and leveraging the relationships that we already have established and heavy research of who's the true decision maker and how do we get in front of them to present ourselves.
So Mark, I'm going to ask you the same question. Being on the buyer side, what challenges have you faced, right? Whether, have you identified folks like a Constance that you trust, they've earned your trust, you're ready to buy, but you just can't go forward. So, what have you seen on your side?
So working alongside, sitting in line reviews, sitting in pitches and pitch contests, one of the biggest things you see from the buyer side or the procurement side is just discovery, being able to find the right people. You think, well, Mark, there are diverse businesses everywhere. Yeah, there are. But then comes the minute factor of, I need to find people with a certain niche or scalability. You'll hear a lot of time people use the word scalability. So some of the common challenges you see depends on where you are as a company, as a procurement business. If I am big box retail and I'm really trying to do the work and I'm intentional about doing the work, I have to also be conscious of not putting someone in a position where they may fail or where they may not be successful. So then I'm looking for people who are scalable. And at that time, you find people at all different levels of their own businesses. Some people are early entrepreneurs, they're emerging brands. Some people are well established. Some people have great products and services, but maybe not the infrastructure, and vice versa. So finding people, meeting them where they're at, but also finding people that can meet the current need I have. And so sometimes that comes a challenge. The other part of it is just making sure we're finding people who do have the resources. And then for us, being a self-identifying reflection, are we offering up the right resources? Do we have the ability to offer development and growth and access to capital? But the biggest thing is just finding people who are ready to go right now. And I'm sure this will lead to another conversation we'll have later. But then when you find those who you are interested in, have a good chance, but they're not ready right now, are you able to then build the resources for them to grow at the later time? Can you give back to them in that fashion?
Love it. So how many suppliers, in the time that you've been doing this, have they've gone through the cycle of the purchase, right? And what I mean by that is, if I'm the supplier and I'm coming to you, my goal is to accomplish three things. I want you to ask yourself about me. Can I trust you? Do I trust you? And are you committed to excellence? So how many times have you gone through that cycle but just couldn't move forward?
It happens a number of times. I'll say this. In my experience of working in retail and other areas, when you're talking about coming across suppliers who are looking for those things, you find suppliers who are very good, you love what they offer. You even might love their why, but maybe they're just not ready just yet. So sometimes it comes a timing thing. And I would tell anybody, no matter what seat I'm sitting in, it's all about timing. Some of the most productive companies who have grown their company had to start with a few no's or a few not right nows. And so for me, when you're sitting in the seat of buyer procurement, I think a lot of times I have somebody that's currently doing the job. Somebody, if I have a bid coming up, I'm preparing for it, or RFIs or things I'm preparing for it, or reviews, but I might have somebody right now and I'm looking to add to or diversify my supply chain. Great. But maybe right now it's just not the time. And so sometimes to answer your question, I've come across a number of suppliers that I've had to tell, not right now, but here's three things that you can go and improve on and then come back to us. And then let's see where we are there. Let's reintroduce the thought. Let's repitch it then. And what you'll see is, to me, that's free game. That's free consulting. When you get a company and you get a supplier diversity professional who's worth their salt, and you're pitching to them and they're taking it to their stakeholders, or the stakeholders themselves are saying, I like them, but not quite this fit. We're looking for someone who's here, who's there, giving them that feedback, giving them that free consulting back to them of, hey, you checked 6 of the 10 boxes. If you can get these 2 or 3 here, we can move forward. I've had to do that a number of times to tell people, not right now, but come back to me. And I don't want people to take that as a negative, because I know we don't like hearing no, we're entrepreneurs. But at the same time, understand this thing is a marathon and not a sprint. And you have to see it from the other side. These other companies are looking to fulfill something that can help them reach their bottom line, because at the end of the day, people still have KPIs and P&Ls to manage to. And so don't take that first no as, oh, they're not trying to do work with diverse companies. Now, if you don't get that engagement and that feedback, challenge that. But if you're getting that feedback and you're getting that engagement and you're getting that follow-up, then I would say that company is trying. And then just keep the conversation going. Keep interacting, keep re-engaging, keep coming back to them and hold them accountable. Hey, you said come back to you when I got these 3 boxes. I got all 4 boxes now. Let's do work. Hold them accountable. But to answer your question, a number of times it's been where it's not a right now, or it just doesn't really fit what we're looking for. And then every now and then you find you'll have a moment or a spurt where you've come across 3 in a row who fit everything you need and check all the boxes. So it varies.
I appreciate it. So Constance, I'm going to circle back to you based on what Mark just mentioned, because I feel like you and I both can put ourselves in a time and a place where we've reached out to someone like a Mark, and what's the response that we get? Log into the portal.
Yeah, scan this QR code and put you in there, right? How many QR codes is there?
Sometimes that can turn into a black hole. But Constance, talk to me about how you have overcome those type of challenges. And what Mark just mentioned, I don't know if the person on the other side is reciprocating that as free consulting, right? Or are they taking it as a blow and giving up? So how do you get past that point in when you've been in that position?
I will say, from personal experience, of course, right? I scanned the QR code, entered the portal, and we've spoken with the representative, a Mark, at a conference. And then we're following up a few months later, and we know their email is going to a dead hole. They're not checking it because there's 1,000 of them, right? But it is hey, I got the feedback after I scanned that at this time you're not looking for our services. Markets, our services, staffing, right? Personnel. And of course, you can do that in-house all day. But are we doing this to the point of needing, how do we give ourselves that value? How are we standing out when we are meeting these buyers? Or I don't ever look at it as a not now. I love not nows. I plan on not now. And that's actually how I met Mark, right? At a conference, and just kept standing in the line and saying, hey, you remember me? Remember you told me you didn't need, because you guys have an MSP? Well, fun stuff. Just that follow-up and holding people accountable, like Mark said, and just saying, hey, you're in supplier diversity. Who do I need to talk to? You may not be the person, but because you're a major corporation, what department needs my services that you're aware of? Just put me in front of the right person. I'm just asking for that free information, because I always ask for a debrief on an RFP. If we lose an RFP, I'm asking for a debrief, right? I want to know, what did I miss on that box, so I know for the next time and build it out better. If this is what you're looking for, this is what that department's looking for. Understanding the hiring manager's needs, because you could be in logistics or supplying product, right? Not just personnel as ourselves, that we provide quality personnel, but we have to partner. If it's a size, like if my capability statement doesn't look large enough for the project, I'm calling you, Marcus, and say, let's do this together so we could present on a larger scale. We're going to build these partnerships because we provide quality services. We are a vetted community, right? To present to the corporates who need a larger footprint. Marcus, you've been 10 years in the industry. I'm 8 years, but our experience together, right there, that's 18 plus years.
Exactly. So this is actually a very good segue into our next topic. One of the things that I see us coming together as is really becoming a voice for the buyer side and the supplier side. So, one of the things I'd love for us to talk about is, what is everyone thinking, but no one is saying? I hear rumors of, is it worth it for me to have this certificate? The response that I say is, you get in where you fit in, right? And you get out what you put into it. But what I'm very interested to know from both of you, what are some of the things that you feel need to be said, but someone may just not have the platform or the courage to say it on both sides of the house? So Constance, I'm gonna go to you first.
Is the set aside worth it? Are we actually getting the funding people believe that we're receiving because we are set aside? I don't think we're having that conversation enough. The real conversation, that just because if you're starting off as a subcontractor, not a prime, because in our own right, we worked up to be a prime, right? As Mark is saying, getting that experience in leading up to be able to hold your own in your industry. But even as a subcontractor, if you're getting these emails 3 days before and they're looking for a minority or diverse certification holder, you haven't vetted that prime who's bidding. You haven't built a relationship or a teaming agreement in place. Excuse me. So now, if you're just starting out, you're feeling kind of overwhelmed. Oh, well, they reached out to me. Let me just send them my certs. And you don't even have a letter of intent in place. You don't have the steps or the information half the time. You're just sending out your certs because you have a certification so they can get their credit. Then the corporates are getting their credit. I mean, Mark, let me know if I'm wrong, but are those corporates checking the actual utilization for those credited set-asides? Or you're just relying on someone to reporting saying, yes, I have a diverse supplier, but you don't know if I'm truly using them to that 26% I said I was going to use them at, or if I'm even using them at all.
I was Constance, really quick, for those who may not know your terminology, when you say set-asides, break that down for us.
So for the set-aside is where you need a DBE, MWBE, a certification certified by a national organization. And it could be WeBank, MSDC, all the acronyms we deal with, right, in business. I feel like we need a glossary. All these glossaries. DB, it could be 8A if you have worked hard and got an 8A certification. Depending what certificate, there's a set aside for anything that is a diverse need. If it's a woman-owned need, a minority MWBE need, if it's a DBE need, if it's a LGBTQ, don't butcher me, you guys, A+ need, a vet, disability vet, anything. All these are set aside that are needed credits when you're going into RFPs or RFIs, depending on the private, and that's on the public sector heavily. But in the private side, not so much unless it's a major corporation. So that private side may, Marcus, correct me as well, if they need credit for their federal funding or their additional funding to show that they are being diverse in a DEI space, which is kind of a scary word right now. Anything DEI or anything diverse, because we all just want to be seen equal and utilized. So
I appreciate that, Constance. So Mark, on the buyer side, and I'm going to say don't give us the whiff on what's in it for me, right?
Mhm.
But what's the voice of the unheard? Because what I see is there are plenty of platforms out there where we see thought leaders in supplier diversity engaging on LinkedIn, and it's great, right? There's different chapters. I think as the suppliers, to your point, we're getting free game, right? So what do you guys want to say to us, but you just haven't said it yet?
So I'm gonna say this. That's a legit question to ask, Constance. And everybody's asking it. And any supplier diversity professional or stakeholder who holds an arm of procurement has heard that. Is it worth it? Is the certification worth it? Is the portal worth it? Now, I know my first message was talking about all the good things that we know, the intention of what we're trying to do. But let me go back to a word that you talked about, incumbent. I like to call this thing that a lot of corporations suffer from called incumbentitis. That means they're always trying to just go with the ones that we know, the ones that are familiar with us, the ones that know how our business work, our systems work. We hear all that, and rightfully so. I get it. That's easy. But then it comes to the other word that you're talking about, and that's intentionality. So what are we wanting to say? I think it's worth it if you put in the work. From a supplier side, if you're putting the work, and I have my certifications, and I'm showing up to the events with a game plan, and I'm showing up to the events, and I'm taking a part of the programming, and I'm taking part of this. Now, this comes from a person who's been the corporate side of this at these events and these certifications, and working with the actual organizations who offer the certifications. I've sat on many boards as well. And what I've seen is this. If you have an intentionality about yourself as a supplier, and you come to these events and you've done your research, and I want to talk to company X, Y, and Z. But before I get there, I got to go do some research on X, Y, and Z, because I need to know exactly how they operate to the best of my ability, what they're looking for the best of my ability. And I want to come to them and say, hey, company X, I know you're looking for this service, and I want you to know I provide that service. Currently, I know you're working with this company over here, but let me tell you how we're different and what we differentiate from them. And here's how I can help you save money. Here's how I can help you save time. Here's how I can help you save whatever that may be. When you have the research and intentionality about yourself to come in and say, here's how I can help you or fill a gap, you're going to make the ears of a stakeholder perk up. Now, if you're doing the certification and expect it to be a push thing to you, then you might be a little bit setting yourself up. What I mean by push and pull is you got to go get the information. You got to go have the game plan. You got to know and give feedback to organizations about what programming you think works, doesn't work, and is needed. I say that because at these events, you're going to get a lot of people to say, get in the portal. I spent a lot of time trying to defend the portal. I spent a lot of time saying, don't look at it as just a dark hole that you go into. But here's the thing. I know for a fact that some people get in that dark hole and get lost. I know that. Yeah. But here's what I'll say. I'm talking about intentionality from a supplier side and having a game plan and utilizing the programming, utilizing the network, and coming in and making sure that when you're in these meetings, you have a business mindset to learn, connect, and just not come up and say, what do you need? Because if you ask somebody what you need, it's probably gonna be one or two things. I need nothing, or I need everything. Mm-hmm. And what are you gonna do then? But here's the gotcha. Let me flip it. We talked about the portal. We talked about intentionality. It has to be intentionality on the company and procurement side as well. we have to be able, if you're a supplier diversity professional, to have intentionality about your way of working as well. Which means when I tell you to go to the portal, am I checking the portal? Am I vetting that? Am I revisiting that? Am I following up on that? And we know a lot of people out there doing good work, but maybe some aren't. The other intentional is, and I think you touched on it, Constance, are we really coming with opportunity and creating access? What I mean by that is, I believe that those companies who are trying to be first in class and not just compliant are being intentional about creating ways of access, which means if I'm a supplier diversity professional and I'm working with buyers and procurement managers, I know exactly what they need at all times. I know exactly what the minimum criteria is, so that when I show up in front of a supplier, I'm not just giving you fluff. I'm listening and I'm advising you with the hopes of creating access and says, yeah, you know what? You got enough for me to make this introduction, or you know what? You got enough to be a part of this bid. So the intentionality has to go both ways. And I know sometimes we don't see that, and people start to feel a little bit, I guess you could say it is deterring when you have 2 or 3 experiences from someone who may not be intentional. Now you're starting to question the whole thing. And then I would say this, that's where the accountability and transparent comes in. Utilize those certification agencies, those NGOs, to be your spokesman, to be the person that goes and speaks on your behalf to the corporates that are showing up at their events. Hold them accountable. Hold these certification agencies accountable.
So Mark and Constance, great feedback. Now I want to go a little deeper. I want to go from 100,000 feet. We're going to skip 50 and go right down to 25.
Wait, before you go, we have a comment to toss at you guys. Alma wrote, well, I fill out the portal request to request a meeting for a brief intro. So when she fills out the portal, she also requests a meeting for a brief intro. She sends a capability statement so that the supplier diversity leader has an idea of what their capabilities are. And then once she builds that relationship and trust over time, she meets them at supplier events and other supplier forums, and then asks for the opportunity to compete. So she builds outside of the portal. The portal is not stopping her from reaching out and having those personal relationships.
That is a fantastic strategy.
And that's very intentional.
It's intentional. I think of all of 2024, the word was intentional, right? In entrepreneurship, being intentional, having a plan when we show up for these conferences, because a lot of times they get costly, right? So you have to get an ROI on our spend. But I think it's I want to spend my time with the actual true decision maker and build, that relationship and guarantee. Because like you said, Mark, they get into this incumbentitis. I call it grandfathered. It's simple. You grandfathered, you got your top 4 vendors, and what are those top 4 vendors? And then sometimes when you do your research, you find out that 2 of those vendors have poor service compared to what you can offer. So then you need to present that to that buyer, right?
Well, before we go to our next topic, and I appreciate that, Cons, I'm going to ask you guys 2 questions, a minute each. Okay. So when we talk about the voice of the unheard, I'm gonna go right into it. How many suppliers out there, Constance, do you think it's the norm to have a sense of anxiety or a feeling that everyone's looking at you as if this is a crutch? And how do you overcome that?
If we're speaking on the private side, I think 90% of suppliers think this is like a crutch or just checking off the box, right? I think we do have, as suppliers and buyers, right? I think buyers get tired of having to check a box and present face. I think suppliers are anxious because what we're doing already is a lot. And we're just like, we just want some of it, not just opportunity to get in front of the right person and provide our services. But I think it's the whole thing of entrepreneurship and running a business is anxiety. There's some kind of angst there, but we live in that moment. I think we live and thrive off of that. that it pushes us, just like Alma stating. She's like, yeah, I apply in that portal and then I go find them and reintroduce myself and get there. That's the, I don't want to say hustle, but that's the drive. I think a lot of us say, but I think 90% in both parties, buyers and suppliers, just feel like we're checking a box when we just want to be seen as the same.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
think I answered that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, great. So Mark, I'm going to come up with something for you on the fly as well, you know, in the sense of being on the buyer side. How often do you think someone is saying, am I practicing what I'm preaching? Or are you just checking the box? Like, so give us some insight into, you know, what am I thinking if I'm on the buyer side? Am I just checking the box? You know, am I really, you know, looking to create spin within a community? You know, what are you thinking?
I say this, if we're being transparent and just based on my experience in talking to people, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say from a buyer or procurement manager who's actually negotiating the deal, excluding supplier professionals who are working on behalf advocating, people who are making the decisions, I'm going to say it's about 60% I'm compliant, checking the box. I'm going to say it's 40% that I'm very, very intentional. And I say it's that close because I think 90, 80% want to do the right thing and want to see equity. But I also know there's a good 60% that realize I have to manage to this P&L and I have to hit these numbers. And am I going to take a chance? Am I going to be intentional? Or am I going to play it safe with the incumbent? And, you know, and people don't really want to have that conversation. You talk about what are we saying, what is not said. That's what's not said. Because when you're introducing somebody new, let's talk about products. When I'm introducing somebody new and I'm adding a product to my shelf or to my e-com, on the shelf in the physical side, I might have to replace something there. So I have to make sure that there are no misses, and I'm very, very confident in this, and I've done the data, and I've run the analysis, and we've done the testing, and we've done all the research. On the services side, I can't lose service for this, so I got to make sure if I'm going to replace somebody who's currently doing the business, is that I think everybody wants to do the right thing, but I would say it's probably 60-40 because there are some real champions out there in that 40% who are really advocating and speaking for diverse suppliers when those suppliers are not in the room. There's about 40% that are going out there and standing on the table and saying, hey, buyer, procurement manager, sourcing, tell me why we can't. There are some people, there's 40% that are out there in those meetings that are saying, how does this help the diverse supplier? And they're challenging the status quo. And that's not always received well. So I would say, to answer your question, it's about 60-40, 60 compliant, 40 pushing the needle, trying to be first in class.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate it. I feel like I just walked you into our next topic, by the way. So based on what the two of you just said, especially what you just mentioned, Mark, and I'm going to go to you first this time. You know, so where do we go from here? So not as a network, but as a community of thought leaders in the buyer space and meebie-weebies in the supplier space. Are we a crab in the barrel or the high tide? So as I say that, you know, what is the most important factor in creating partnerships between buyers and diverse suppliers?
I think the biggest factor is, as a supplier community, don't get discouraged and don't feel down if the words and the noise is sounding negative. Well, what I would say from the supplier community is let's keep the main thing the main thing. Continue to work on your product and services. Continue to build, continue to learn, continue to grow, continue to rely on all the resources that are at your fingertips to grow your business. Continue to grow. Look at it as a stepping stone. If I'm a very advanced company, then yeah, let's have those advanced conversations. But if you're somewhere below there, continue to scale and grow your business and continue to show up, continue to challenge, and continue to hold people accountable. From the supplier community, Now, the other side across the street from the community are the stakeholders who are procuring. Continue to do the work. Continue to advocate for and try to advance diverse suppliers. Because here's what you got to know. If you have a service or a product, at the end of the day, I guarantee your customer base or the communities you work in are diverse. And if you truly believe that the work you're doing is the right work, wouldn't you want your company to be representative of the communities you sit in or the customers you serve? And so for me, you continue to do the work. Now, how do we work together? We have to keep the main thing. Keep showing up at these conferences, keep showing up at events and challenging and accepting and meeting and talking. Just keep the conversation going. We know that the administrative we're coming in and some noise around the country has been attack on DEI, attack on this and shutting down this. But at the same time, we know there are true champions. And once you find a true champion, you lean into that champion. And then that champion, if I'm a stakeholder, I'm a champion. I got to go into the room and not be afraid to speak as a champion. I have to go in there and be okay with people giving me side eyes or people saying, oh, here he goes again. I got to be okay with going in there and saying, hey, listen, it's apples to apples with these two companies we're looking at. And right now, I would favor this company that is diverse because it's apples to apples. Not saying it's a handout, not saying we're trying to give any favor, but if it's apples to apples and we know there is very little equity in a certain place or a certain market or a certain segment, then yes, let's create equity. Let's make sure we're doing the right thing, because what you realize is, and what there's a lot of studies out there, diverse supply chains drive success and profit.
Thank you. That was great. So I want to go back to on the supplier side, and Alma gave us a great recommendation on the sense of how to create a successful partnership from the supplier side to the buyer. Constance, what are some things that you've done? How can we as suppliers be ready for that conversation? You know, what I'm hearing from Mark is, you know, we need to be involved. We need to be anticipatory. We want to kind of see the conversation before the conversation actually happens. So what are some things that you've done to build these relationships? And before you answer that question, I saw that you received, you know, talk about the award that you just received at one of the latest conferences. I saw, you know, it kind of front and center. So I know that didn't come out of thin air. You had to work for it. So tell us how you got there.
I don't know. It's been kind of busy one, but I believe you're speaking of the HMSDC award here, which is one of the MSDC's affiliates as Supplier of the Year, and then also one WBA, which is affiliate of WeBank's Connecting the Dots award, because I truly believe in building a coalition of qualified suppliers and working with them. And that's how we've been expanding and growing for multiple industries and in staffing, responding to bids so we can show that we have the capacity and the ability to the suppliers, to the vendors as suppliers, that it's just not HJ Staffing, it's HJ Staffing and two other agencies that you have never had access to are known to get the projects done. And so over the years, just built out this great team of amazing female-owned minority agencies. And we've gone after from our small businesses we work with to large federal contracts. And that's been recognized over the course of time, because now we're bringing in other agencies and other affiliates in different industries to grow. So collaboration and that mindset of the crab in a barrel is out the door. You come to our table, we're all going to eat together, we're all going to work together, we're going to expand our network because you might know someone or someone may know someone, right? We're going to leverage all of this so we all can be successful. The crab in a barrel mentality is out the window when we work with each other, just because it's such an old practice that it's not beneficial anymore. And I know people still practice this because I've talked to other agencies, they're like, fend for yourself. I got here all by myself, you know? And it's like, why put that struggle? Like, let's be informative with each other. Let's share our experiences, because you know what? I'm not hard-headed. I am stubborn and I'm a disruptor, But if you tell me this occurred to you, and then I could see how that happened, I'm going to do my best to avoid it. I'm not a show me child to that level. And so that practice is what's beneficial for me. I listen, I research, I network. I love my network and love to expand the network because we don't know what we don't know. And in this business and also being an entrepreneur, there's so much we don't know. I mean, down to our applications, like you might be paying more in your payroll services and I have a better payroll provider. Just little things like that, the most simple things to get back to our bottom lines, but also to benefit each other. Who knows? So I feel like we need to be more high tide. I believe the buyers in supplier diversity, as Mark was saying, that 40% that he feels, I might say it might be 20%, but really 10. But for that group that is actually trying to do the work and putting the vendors in front of the diverse suppliers and the small businesses, that's great. And I think 2025, let's stop calling ourselves small businesses. We're a business, okay? We're a business in our own industries. There's no cap. I'm throwing out the whole Federal Reserve's number to consider a small business. We are a business that supply great service and we're here to help, right? That's the presentation we're going forward in 2025. We're going to pass it back and give back to our community. We're going to bring everyone forward with us. If you're capable of doing it, we're going to provide that free information of our experiences and what we've learned. So crab in a barrel, I'm not for it. I know it happens. It's occurred. I've experienced it. Even from people that you're like, oh, they can mentor us. Yeah, no. And then, then do a lot of cohorts. If you can be part of a cohort, I'm cohorted out, but join cohorts because that's even more free information and more networking and expansion to get through this. And that's, we have to just be high.
I really, really appreciate that feedback. So that kind of takes us to, as we start wrapping up, to really put out, what our next chat will be about. And, as we continue to have these conversations, what we want to do is build this cohort, build this community, bring buyers in, bring suppliers in, give free consulting, as Mark talked about earlier, so we can all be each other's high tide, and while there may not be an immediate opportunity, there could be something in the long run. We may know someone that needs another service. Right now, if you were to look on LinkedIn, who we've looked to as thought leaders in the D&I space, we're unfortunately seeing open to work because there's a lot of organizations out there that are dropping, right? Diversity and inclusion. We only have a couple minutes left today, so we won't go that route, but we want to build a community, to thrive and to have folks to lean on. And I'll leave everyone with this. This conversation all started with me just picking up the phone and calling Constance out of the blue one day. Hey, I see you're a diverse supplier. I'd love to team up. And that one phone call turned into multiple conversations that brought Mark to the conversation. And what we're working on now is carrying that. I call it, what is it? Steve Harvey's 10X. We all just need to 10X it. We all need to invite a couple friends to these conversations. And before you know it, we're going to have a community that's going to help push us forward. So, with just a couple minutes left, I want to see if anyone has any questions. I want to, ask that you answer all the polls that we've had out for you guys. But any questions from anyone on the chat?
We have a couple of comments. Alma said, we keep showing up and continue to do the work. Amplify and amplify. Help. My thing just moved. Help others, spread the word, and push the negative chatter. That's great advice. And Rashmi said, be authentic, transparent, persistent, and consistent. My key takeaway from being in the supplier diversity space for the last 3 years.
I appreciate that. So what I would love for everyone to do, Courtney, could you go to the next slide for us? If you guys could email us some information from your organization one of the things that Mark, Constance, and I want to do are spotlights, right? We would love to have buyer spotlights. We'd love to have supplier spotlights, because it's not just about Impresiv Health. It's not just about HJ Staffing. It's not just about Mark Winston Enterprises. It's us together as a community. So, we want to start these spotlights starting with you guys, with our reach, and we're going to build this together. So with that said, thank you guys for joining. Really enjoyed the conversation. I'm looking forward to the next one. And, everyone just have a great rest of your week and a great holiday season.